The biggest issue facing the country at the moment is the pandemic, COVID-19, and the way we should be handling it, and whether or not the politicians who guide our lives are doing it properly, okay? Now, this week, the Prime Minister and several of his ministers, and they're aided and abetted by scientific advisors, have brought more restrictions into our lives. Some of those restrictions affect our ability to go to pubs during the hours we want to be in those pubs and to mix with the people we want to mix with in those public houses. The English pub is a great British institution, okay? It doesn't only drive the economy because of the number of people that it employs and the number of people who go there and therefore generate wealth within the economy, but it's also a tradition in this country which we should protect for the sake of all our lives for the future, okay? One man who's a giant within that industry is Mr. Tim Martin, the founder and creator and current chairman of Wetherspoons, and I'm delighted to say he's joining me now. Tim, a very good evening to you.
Good evening, Mike. Nice to talk to you. Liked your intro speech.
Well, thank you very much indeed. You're one of my heroes, Tim, not just because you run pubs, but because you are an industrialist, and people like you and Richard Branson and Lord Sugar should be running this country because you actually make things work, okay? A lot of politicians make them fail. What has been your reaction this week to the extra restrictions imposed upon your pubs, Tim?
Well, I think it's making it very, very, very difficult for pubs. Everyone knows about the curfew, no scientific evidence. You've got to put on a face mask to go to the loo. There's no scientific evidence for that. You used to be able to go to the bar a few weeks ago. Yes. There are screens around the bar to protect customers and staff. Now you have to sit at a table. So for many people, it's no longer a pub, and it's become a quasi-restaurant, and an annoying one at that. So pub sales have gone down a lot across the industry. Wetherspoon alone pays £1 in every 1,000 of taxes to the UK that the UK government collects. Right. You need 1,000 companies like Wetherspoon, and no one has to pay any tax at all. So it's important for the government, but also we've got to earn a buck, and our staff have got to earn some money. So I think, obviously, if we don't want to kill people, but we think that a system more like Sweden seems to be working better from a health point of view. Yes. And pubs and restaurants are staying open. So we're advocating something like that. And it was a slightly minority argument 6 weeks ago, 2 or 3 months ago. Everyone wanted to give the lockdown a fair go, as they say in New Zealand. But now I think you've got journalists from the Times, from the Telegraph, from the Guardian, Larry Elliott, the economics editor, saying lockdowns don't work. So we're in favour of social distancing. We're in favour of hygiene. We just want a sensible set of rules.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. You're right about the fact that you've got to go in now and sit down. It's not the same experience as it used to be, particularly if they're showing live football or something like that. Nevertheless, it's a huge advance on the pubs being closed altogether. Thank God the British pub has been allowed to reopen. Now, let me say this to you, Tim, please. I'm a huge fan of Wetherspoon pubs. I'm not saying that because you're here, but you brought the pub to the common man. Fish and chips on a Friday, biggest fish and chip seller in the country, okay? That's when I used to hit your pubs. I go to the Assembly Rooms in Epsom. It's a huge pub. It's one of your pubs. It's huge. It used to be a draper's shop, actually. And I feel very, very safe in your pubs, okay? I use other pubs. I use the Star down in Gosport on the south coast. But whenever whenever I go into one of your pubs, I feel protected. I feel like I'm distanced. I feel like the staff are immaculate in the way that they serve you. You go and sit down. They bring you your drink. They bring you your machine. Everything is cleaned immediately that somebody leaves a table. Now, I feel safe there, and I don't feel safe out on the streets. My view is get people off the streets and get more of them into the pubs by lifting this ridiculous 10 p.m. curfew and releasing people to enjoy themselves in a safe environment.
Well, it's an interesting point you make. So some people would think, quite fairly, and I can understand, they think because pubs are so busy, it must be a place where you'd be likely to get the virus.
Mm.
But in actual fact, when people have investigated it, especially since social distancing rules apply in the pub, and you've seen the screens, you've seen the tables
Yep.
spaced out, the hand sanitizers everywhere, you don't get these things in a house. And what people have found is there have been very, very few infections within pubs. And it's counterintuitive. You wouldn't think it, but it's true. So not everyone thinks like you do, including a lot of top scientists, but they're now finding out that what you think is right. And for example, the leader of Birmingham City Council, Ian Ward, said exactly that. He said, look, we've looked into the data, and the data says people are getting it elsewhere. They're getting it in care homes, they're getting it, unfortunately, in hospitals, and they're getting it, above all, in their own homes. They're not actually getting it in pubs. It's possible to get it in a pub.
Yeah.
If you have a passionate embrace with someone in pubs and don't social distance, then you can get COVID. But provided you follow the rules, they could stay open.
Oh, I totally
without
agree.
jeopardizing health.
Yeah, I think I've read a piece saying only 40 cases of people contracting COVID have happened in pubs in this country. Only 40 registered cases of people getting in pub. I think it's a terribly safe environment. What do you think of people like Mr. Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, and I don't mean personally, but I mean when he's pushing for more and more restrictions in a city which is absolutely decimated? It seems to me that he is barking up the wrong tree. If we got people out to stimulate the economy, stimulating the economy also helps to revive the country, which in itself revives the National Health Service, where a lot of people, millions of people, are now struggling to be able to get the treatment they need.
I think I don't agree with Sadiq Khan. I think the reality, Mike, is the country's split. It's split into people who believe you should have more lockdown and you should close pubs and possibly close schools, etc. And then the other side of the fence is what I'm on and you're on, and Sweden is our proof. It's our evidence in a way.
Yes.
We say that you're much better off on a health basis and also on an economic basis if you don't lock down. Social distancing works, sensible hygiene works, but lockdown simply don't work. Even the World Health Organization has said it. The odd thing, Mike, and this is the really weird thing, the whole issue's been massively politicized.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to have a sensible conversation. You got Matt Hancock, Boris Johnson and others who've dug their heels in the bunker, and they're being outbid by Keir Starmer at the moment in daft ideas, when actually, if they really did look at the science, they'd say what Carl Hennigan from Oxford University, Sunetra Gupta from Oxford University, Mark Woolhouse from Edinburgh University, etc., these people say is correct, that you don't need to lock down. And if you keep these lockdowns going, it's only a matter of time before you destroy the economy. It's happening fast. Once the economy's destroyed, you haven't got money for the things you want to do.
I totally agree. At least two of those scientists you just mentioned put their names to the Great Barrington Declaration, which says that lockdowns don't work. When are these guys going to realise that every time we have a lockdown, it sort of calms it down a bit, but then when you release the lockdown, it goes back up again? And it's not going to be possible to get rid of it through this method. The other thing, Tim, this directly relates to your industry. You must have had reports back from a lot of your regional managers, from your individual pub managers, about the state of a town high street at 10 o'clock on a Friday night when they've got to throw everybody out and everybody's on the street at the same time. And you'll have seen pictures of the London Tube at 10:05 when all the pubs are pouring people out into the street at the same time. How can that possibly be a safety measure?
Well, this is because it's become politicized, and measures are being decided under arbitrary emergency powers by a few people in Downing Street. Silly decisions are resulting, and the silliest of all is the curfew, because in our pubs we've got 43,000 people just in our pubs alone who are doing their best, and several million in the industry who are doing their best to enforce social distancing rules and hygiene rules which work. So they do that right up till 10 o'clock at night, but then they go off duty and everyone goes out of the pubs. So who's enforcing the social distancing rules then? The answer is, the poor old police haven't got the personnel to do it, and it's not really enforceable in people's homes or at private parties. So it's irrational and silly. But the wonder for people like us not involved in politics on a day-to-day basis is how you can keep going with the wrong system, like lemmings heading towards the cliff, for such a long time. It's going to change around in a while, and I feel sure that people will say, with the best of intentions, people thought lockdowns will work. They don't work. It worked far better in Sweden. But why did it take us so long to understand that? That's the weird thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, we've all seen individual stories of people who've got small businesses who have been told to close them down. I've got triple lockdown now in Liverpool, a city close to my heart. That's where my club Everton play. And, obviously many thousands of visits to that city. But you don't just have one business, Tim. You have hundreds, nearly thousands of businesses for which you're responsible in the form of Wetherspoon pubs. You started that from nothing. You were a barrister who decided to become a businessman and open a pub, and it's mushroomed since there. You must be heartbroken to see this empire you've created, this wonderful business which employs tens of thousands of people and brings so much joy to society, crumbling in front of your eyes because of the idiotic decisions by politicians, some of whom have not had a proper job in the whole of their lives.
Well, I'm tempted to agree with you wholeheartedly. It is. It's extreme. It's extremely worrying. It really is, because it's a fact of life in the political world that the people running the country often haven't run a business, and the people making these decisions, I don't think any of them has run a business. And it is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking at our scale for our thousands of employees and customers that it's being threatened in such an obvious way. I feel more sorrier for smaller companies, individual restaurateurs, individual owners of nightclubs, for example. And people who've built up a business over maybe 15, 20 years, and they've got one or two pubs, and people who've got careers working for them, they built up over a long time. Absolutely. It is very, very, very... It's going to be very tough if there's 3 or 4 million unemployed. When people realize that it's been based on making the wrong policies. So I think you and I, Mike, can march on Downing Street and say, guys, everyone makes a mistake. We're conciliatory guys, you and me. We can say to them, everyone makes a mistake. Boris, Matt, we understand it. But we've been talking to Anders Tegnell in Sweden. We've visited Sweden. And it's working. So change course. All you got to do is change course. So I hope they will. I hope they're listening. I'll bet they are listening.
Well, we'll send them a tape of this, don't worry, because your advice is so sage, if you get my meaning. And Boris should get over to Sweden and do it. Is there any chance of a national petition, Tim? You're very good at organising things. What about organising a national petition that online, and you would get tens of millions of signatures, and then it has to be noted by Downing Street. In law now, if you get enough signatures on any petition, they've got to take notice. That would at least give them the clear evidence that they're wrong and the public are right.
I've been quite good, touch wood, self-praise at campaigning, speaking on your show and campaigning. What I'm not very good at is actually lobbying. So I've never gone along to see a minister and said, you should do what I say. But if someone gets a petition together, I'll sign it.
Brilliant.
I'll try and get myself organised to get a petition.
Brilliant. If you had a one-to-one with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister now, what would you tell him in 30 seconds?
I'd say, Boris, Timbo talking here. You've got to change course. And you've got to start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, because the times they are changing. I'd quote Bob Dylan, which I've just done.
Please do.
It's got to change course.
Well, that's great. Tim, thank you very much indeed for